dragon waits.
We're definitely going to be keeping a very close eye on Bladesworn. Let's just make that clear. Like, if this pushes Bladesworn on the meta, we'll be looking for ways to bring it back very quickly. Yeah. Because the goal of this change is not to delete Bladesworn, so if it does delete Bladesworn, that's not ideal.
We're still waiting for those promised updates, bugs, and skill fixes that will revolutionize the class, make it Virgil from Devil May Cry, and give us all free cake. But I can't push a boulder uphill forever. And now that we've reached the absolute pinnacle of Bladesworn builds with the new Rifle Bladesworn, I'm back to doing what I love, which is theory crafting other classes. Hey, I'm Pseudo, welcome back, and I try to create an approachable environment for people, mostly to get into World vs. World, but World vs. World is akin to PvP, and you can't talk about one without the other. I am a systems and build design nerd. We already looked at Mechanist. We're going to be looking at Herald, mostly due to Homage throwing down the gauntlet, and my hubris in thinking that I was actually a good Bladesworn player. I got top 250 on it, but he got top 100. However, little does he know I was one of the first Condi Revenants. Oh yeah, back in the day, I was one of the first people even trying to make Condi Herald a thing. I actually dug through my archives and have some footage of glorious 480i Pseudo trying to lab Condi Herald rotations on the PvP golem before DPS golems or the Special Forces training area was even a thing. But we're going to be looking at Herald in 2025 and how it's sort of aged, and I'm going to spoil this right now, it's aged quite well. A lot of the systems that ended up being put in place for Revenant in the original or post-beta envisioning of its concept after Heart of Thorns are still a thing, and they have continued to be a thing on what is arguably a pretty B+, A- class in terms of Guild Wars 2 today. Revenant is probably no joke, like Homage said, if you play it right, the strongest heavy class right now in Guild Wars 2. Not only in terms of what it can pull off, but also in terms of player potential and what you can pull off if you're a really skilled player. I am not, but we're going to be checking out more from a design perspective, my experience on Herald, and what I think it has or is lacking in 2025 in terms of design, balance, and fun capacity in Guild Wars 2. But before we jump into it, I'd really appreciate it if you go over to Homage's channel and give him a poke or a shout out or a sub. He put a lot of effort into his Bladesworn video, and I don't want to spoil the video too much, but after his experience with it for a week, he deserves all the head pats you can give him. So go check out his video, it'll be linked below. But let's jump into it. So here's how my experience on Herald went. I played roughly 30 ranked matches and had an exactly 50% win rate, notably with one game on either side with a blatant win trader, which was, you know, Guild Wars 2, I guess. Granted, I started mid-gold 3 and ended there as well, whereas Homage started in plat, I believe, so take that for what you will, but I'd say my experience was probably considerably, how do I put this? Considerably more functional than his, and I felt like all of the fights that I lost were very much a skill issue on my part, or a matchup issue, and not for the lack of current execution or buildcraft of Herald itself. So, talking about design a little bit, very brief aside, people forget that Rev was originally designed more like Thief actually, but in reverse, intended to be locked to actually only one weapon set. Doesn't that sound familiar? Whereas, instead of having swappable weapon skills, you would have swappable heal through elite skills, including utility skills, and that would be your trade-off. You'd get more spammy weapon skills that were weaker, but stronger utility skills and an elite skill. Since I've been getting back into it, I've heard a lot of I hate the energy management system on Rev, and I do get that, especially if you just play PvE. But in PvP World vs. World, that's kind of what lets your Revenant skills be a bit stronger than other classes, just in general. Most of Revenant's buttons are really good, even in 2025 terms, and they remain just a little bit above a lot of other skills, although some of them could definitely be tuned up. Obviously, there are exceptions to everything. So for my personal experiences of Revenant and Herald, I know this video will likely drop after Homage's, but with the announcement of Duskbloods and me being a closet edgelord myself who desperately wants a Bloodborne sequel that's never going to happen, I serendipitously decided to model my new Revenant off of a more Bloodborne hunter aesthetic. Let me know if I nailed it, or if I didn't. Something great minds, I suppose, right? Anyway, so for my personal experiences of Revenant and Herald, I actually broke this down into just two categories, what I liked and what I didn't. The things I liked, most of it, I actually really like the energy system. At the very least from a design's perspective, even discounting execution, although I think that was pretty solid too. Revenant isn't super buggy, at least not these days, and most of the skills do what they say on paper. They work, and they feel good to use. Not all of your skills follow this in execution, obviously. Some of them could definitely be tuned up in terms of balance, but the energy system in general allows your skills to be a bit, in my opinion, buffer than other classes' skills. I also like how it effectively lets you refresh most of your skills every 10 seconds. Lots of them have cooldowns that are longer than this, obviously, but a lot of them don't, and that's a huge plus for Revenant, at least in terms of being able to press buttons when other classes can't. I'm a huge fan of both banking energy as well as the legend weapon swap technique to trigger 4-on swap sigils. You won't always be in a scenario where you can pull either of these off, and sometimes trying to do the legend swap, weapon swap thing will leave you desynced and you'll be stuck on a weapon with sigils you really don't want for that scenario, but that's more of a skill issue, and I could definitely get better at my legend management. And the weapons are good. They work and are fun to use. Almost all of them, really. Revenant has a lot of tools that just in general give it the ability to pull off some insane stuff. It has teleports, it has lots of survivability, it even has mini Defiant stance, arguably even better than current Defiant stance, because while it only lasts for 2 seconds if you take the actual glint attunement on Herald, it has a faster cast time, whereas Defiant stance recently got dumpstered, and that's one of the strongest buttons in the game. However, this is pretty much one of your only invulnerable tools that you really have. You do get access to shield, and shield 5 is a good button. It heals you and blocks, although it does the dragon trigger thing where it roots you in place. Just can't get away from it, which isn't fun on any class. But still, it is a block, and blocks are good in current year of Guild Wars 2, because as I mentioned in the Mechanist video, in PvP, things are very glassy right now, and if you're not blocking, dodging, or invulnerable in some capacity, you're probably kinda dead, which is a weird sentence unless you're on a super bunkery build. But Herald lets you run around the map, mostly doing your job as a duelist or roamer, and +1ing fights, taking into consideration that you can usually win them if you have the right execution. Something that I learned from fighting really good Heralds and watching them lab back and forth is this is good advice for PvP in general, but if you don't already have an About Face button bound, you really want to have one, because as soon as you enter combat on a Revenant, you start building up energy, and this lets you do a lot of your insane burst combos before switching to your other legend and resetting to 50 energy. It's just how Revenant balance works, which is good. It's kind of cool to have a class that sort of comes back up to equivalence power or refreshes itself every 10 seconds. However, this also limits the upper echelon of power that Revenant can have. It's not like a Guardian or an Untamed where you can basically enter the fight with all of your buttons and resources available to you. To have the maximum potential as a Revenant, you actually need to do this banking energy technique, which is both good and bad in terms of new player experience. It causes, I feel like, the sentiment of not having enough energy if you're new on it, because you want to press all your buttons and face roll as soon as you swap to a legend, when the real technique seems to be swap to a legend, and unless you're in the thick of it, kind of kite away and build up energy as you re-engage on a fight. This is actually pretty cool. It's sort of, again, like Thief in reverse, but sort of the same playstyle, where you build up a bunch of your energy and then nuke or pressure an enemy to the point where they can die. I like that a lot. Revenant also has just really functional skills. They go where they're supposed to, they do what it says on the tin, and for the most part, now that it's gotten over its bug phase, believe me, it had one, the skills are good. The spear skills are good. I don't know why Spear 4 is allowed to heavy CC and damage, but, you know, 2025, stuff's nuts. Even some of the older weapons like Mace and Shield, as I mentioned, are really good. And my experience in World vs. World with Hammer was also fairly solid. I was actually thinking of swapping out the Spear instead of the Hammer on my weird Condi roaming build for Revenant when I was theory crafting this, because I was having so much fun with the Dark Fields and with the guaranteed projectile finisher that Hammer has on the auto attack. Revenant also has this thing going, if you look at the build editor, where it seems to be sort of jack of many trades, but you need to sort of choose which trades you're speccing into, right? For the most part in PvP, I was following a Condi build that Homage had given me for this, because I wanted my experience to be the authentic Guild Wars 2 experience of trying to play a meta build and seeing what I thought of it, not the pseudo experience of playing a Guild Wars 2 build and trying to make Hammer Lifesteal Condi Revenant work in PvP. But if we hop over to the build editor, the tools that Revenant has available for it are good. You don't have to run cleansing energy on everything. You can actually trigger 4 on-swap sigils every 10 seconds by legend swapping and then weapon swapping, which is something from back in the day, and then it got culled in a patch, and they actually decided this was deliberate and added it back, which is super interesting. So no other class really, other than Fast Hands Warrior, has the ability to trigger 4 on-swap sigils over the span of 10 seconds, which is super good. It's something a lot of people don't generally consider when they're thinking of Revenant design, that actually just gives it one more tool in its box that other classes may or may not have access to. The other things that you can choose between in terms of runes, amulet, and relic nowadays are all pretty good, and you have some good options. A lot of the time I ended up going with a relic of the antitoxin, which I can't believe is still in PvP, but it's quite good because Revenant does have kind of limited access to Condi Clear, although I know the meta relic right now is probably Leadership or this Zephyrite relic that a lot of people are running. And Herald specifically gets good tools with the access to Glint. You get Defiant Stance, you get this Stow cancelable Chaotic Release, which honestly, I'm not a huge fan of Stow cancelable animations period in the game, but it is really good. I think that if you Stow cancel something, it should probably go on a half cooldowns, including things like the Reaper Elite Shout, just because you shouldn't be able to just spam and bait out people's dodges without risking something. However, that's more of a game design thing, and we're looking at Herald specifically. The true nature skills are pretty good as well. The little bonus you get for being a Herald on top of being able to channel Glint. On Shiro, they remove boons, and on Glint, I believe, they extend boons, which is neither here nor there. But it does give you a little bit more ability to charge up your spear nukes and actually get the pressure off when you need to either do enough damage or CC chain your opponent to death, which is quite good. Looking at the traits, Revenant and Herald in general has good traits. It kind of always has, and probably always will. This one's bugged, Vicious Reprisal. I believe the boon duration doesn't stack with other boon duration, but in PvP, who cares, right? You don't have boon duration, thankfully. Retribution is a solid trait line. It's kind of your defense. I'm not going to go through all of the Herald things, but it gives you a lot of things that defense does if you're comparing it to other classes, predominantly other heavy classes, as well as some might for some bonus damage, which is basically what you get from things like defense on Warrior, although that's not the yardstick that the entire world is compared by. Swear I have a personality. Shut up. Corruption's a fairly solid trait line as well. I was also recommended to try out Invocation because it does give you some Condi Cleanse. I went with Corruption because it gives you some bonus damage, and most notably, it gives you either Diabolic Inferno, which kind of guarantees that you have poison on your opponent, so your power damage or Condi damage can stick, and it also has the option to take Permeating Pestilence, which I maintain is the strongest trait in the game, period. You know, you need Revenant things to be able to do Revenant things, but it gives you this unblockable ignoring blind condition transfer on a 10-second cooldown that transfers up to 2 conditions per target, and because this can target 5 things, you can transfer basically all of the conditions off of yourself, not just cure, transfer onto groups in an AoE fight, which is kind of crazy for an unblockable skill. Thinking of you, Dragon Trigger. Sorry, gosh, swear I have a personality. Shiro skills have also, over the years, they were really OP, and then they got nerfed to Oblivion, and now they've sort of come up to a manageable level. Impossible Odds combos really well with the 4 skill Abyssal Blot, because this hits 4 times, and Impossible Odds will add to each of those strikes, and then you can cancel it. Something I actually struggled with. This is definitely a skill issue on my part, where I would leave Impossible Odds active way too long and I would run out of energy way too fast. Phase Traversal is your teleport toward your opponent. Give yourself unblockable stacks and quickness ability. It also is just a good skill. It works. It has the headbutt lag from back in the day, the Berserker headbutt lag, but it works. Riposting Shadows is one of the best stun breaks in the game. It costs 40 energy, which is probably a little bit too much, but gives you Fury, and on this build, Vigor, has a long evade frame, gives you some endurance back while it does cost energy, cures really harmful conditions for your build, and obviously breaks stun. This is an enormous evade, and what Dragon Spike Mine dreams of being in its sleep. Jade Winds recently got damage, won't show up here, but got damage added back to it. So if you can actually hit somebody with this, it chunks. And notably also, I learned this when I was fighting Homage, a lot of the lifesteal things on this build, whether it's the actual granting allies Facet of Nature, Shiro ability that you can activate passively, or Enchanted Daggers, or some of your Devastation traits, will actually go through things like Endure Pain or Stone Signet, which is kind of bonkers, especially considering that a lot of classes that have passive physical damage immunities like Ranger and Warrior don't get true invulns like Elementalist Obsidian Flesh or Mesmer's Distortion. It really just goes to show you that in current year of Guild Wars 2, lifesteal is still extremely strong, and that also means that the things that can counter lifesteal above and beyond Endure Pain like effects, like Distortion and True Invulns, or Renewed Focus on Guardian, are even a cut above that. Just design things to keep in the back of your mind. Spear's design is alright. It wasn't really noob friendly, but I don't think it was intended to be. Abyssal Blitz is a just OP defensive skill, where you can't really use this as a movement skill, it doesn't move you very far, but you can throw it on these blitz mines and stand in them, and the standing in them, because they apply just the worst conditions, is really what makes them strong. And Abyssal Raise, if you can get it off, while it's got the longest cast time, I think next to just about anything in the game, or at least it feels like it does, If you build up enough stacks of your passive on the spear, you can weapon swap and then trigger a big nuke, which does work with things like Sigil of Intelligence or Sigil of Vision. So in terms of design, bringing it back home, Revenant has tools. It kind of feels like you can always be a jack of all trades, master of none on Revenant, but if you really spec it out into pure damage or pure survivability, you definitely can with the option of things like, survivability Vindicator with all of its blocks and whatnot now, or Pure Glass Herald. Renegade's another thing, maybe Homage will touch on one of these days. It's in its own category, mostly because a lot of the skills just kind of don't work, but no other class has skills that just don't work in the game, right? So drawing into the things I didn't like bucket, there's very few really. There's some design overlap with weapons. I'm not really sure what place dual swords have in a world where greatsword exists, for example, other than being the other melee power ones that you can take in an assassin style role. And I'm not a huge fan of shortbow's redesign. Both are decent options, don't get me wrong, swords and shortbow, but I'm not a huge fan of where you basically just press either 2 or 3 on the shortbow and all of the arrows auto-track from space to your target. That's fine for the 2 skill, but the 3 skill used to function where it was stronger the further away you were from your target, as opposed to other ranged weapons at the time that ANET has 180'd on since then, where they were supposedly looking at you ranger longbow, less powerful the further you were from your target compared to a melee weapon. Especially because the fact that you can target the 2 skill over your shoulder and the 3 you can't, it just feels desynced. There's a lot of this on Warrior as well, where they could have used the same coding for skills like Flaming Flurry versus the Spear, Berserker F1, Wild Throw as well, where one of them can be thrown over your shoulder and one can't for ANET reasons, I suppose. I wish they'd homogenize these things, where IMO should really be one or the other, and probably have different utility for the 2 and the 3 skills on the shortbow or design space that they fill. But that's all game design talk, and we're here for Revenant. That's pretty much all that I didn't like. But yeah, what did I think of it overall? Revenant's fun. Revenant's good. Revenant's not noob friendly, so if you're looking for a class where you're just going to pick up and play, try out probably Willbender first and then graduate to Revenant and learning how to manage your energy. From what I took away from it, you can probably be a pretty good Revenant after you sort of make that transition with relatively minimal effort, but to be a great Revenant, that top 10%, you're going to have to put in a lot of time, more time than not on this class, or at least learn how to bank your energy again. A lot of it's going to come from knowing your cooldowns and whatnot, which are longer because they did do that revision where they unlocked the second weapon set from Revenant back in the day. Oh my god, it was 2015. I'm so old, I'm probably going to die soon. Anyway, I always like to rate classes on idea versus execution, and Herald, even being the first specialization they ever did for Revenant, has aged quite well. It's probably a 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 idea, and still, miraculously, which is a good score, an 8 out of 10 execution. It's pretty cool. It's got options, it's got tools, and it's fun to play and learn, and there's a room for growth and improvement on it if you want to get really, really good at it. Revenant rules. Herald's good. It's not the best. I think Vindicator outshines Herald in a lot of ways, but that's just kind of the power creep of the game. The dodgies that are even longer than the actual... I think the Vindicator dodges are even like 0.05 seconds longer than a regular dodge frame on other classes. It's one more thing where it's just like, wow, that's really good. Anyway, if you want to see me play it badly, I'll have some of the footage rolling while we talk about this. But if you want to see someone play Herald less badly, go check out Homage's channel. I also want to give him a little bit of another plug here at the end. He was an absolute champ doing this trade with me. I can't thank him enough, and this is his first finding out about this. He's going to be receiving
250
Mystic Coins to do PvP in-houses with his guild War Pigs, which you should absolutely go join if you're looking for a healthy PvP guild where people really just like playing and getting better. So again, go check him out, go win some money, thanks to Homage. And if you're looking for a World vs. World roaming guild, join Vanguards of Ascension. We're pretty much the same thing, just for World vs. World. Can't get through it without self-plugging something. But yeah, I'm Pseudo. Subscribe and follow if you like this nonsense. I stream Monday, Wednesday, sometimes Friday at 9 Eastern, and we're gonna have lots of giveaways coming up, so don't miss them. Thanks, guys. Cheers. I'll see you in Tyria.